My name's Amber, and I have a tale to share. For years, I was married to Jake, and we had a son named Tommy. Tommy had recently graduated from college and landed a job downtown. He moved out into his own apartment. Both Jake and I worked at Steinman Financials. My role as deputy chief accountant and Jake working in the finance department. Before tying the knot, we signed a prenuptial agreement. If we ever parted ways, the person whose name was on the property would keep it, and the money would be split equally. It seemed fair to us. We bought an apartment first, putting it under my name, then a house which went under Jake's name. We each had our own car, and I kept all the receipts from shopping. Being an accountant, I knew how important they could be down the line. Recently, Jake had become fixated on our retirement plans. He'd spend endless hours watching financial news, ranting about inflation and the rising cost of living. "Have you seen gas prices?" he'd grumble. "How are we supposed to retire with everything so expensive?" I tried to reassure him, but he would dive deeper into risky ventures, always searching for a shortcut. One day, he came home bubbling with excitement about day trading. "Amber, I think I found our golden ticket," he said, waving his tablet in front of me. "If we play our cards right, we could double our money fast." I shook my head. "Jake, that's too much of a gamble. We can't risk our savings like that." He sulked for days after that, but I remained firm. Stability was what we needed, not high-risk schemes. One evening, Jake suggested we take a walk. The streets were quiet as we wandered, and he brought up retirement again. "You know, Amber," he said, his voice soft, "there's a way we could make a quick few $100,000 and set ourselves up for a nice retirement." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? How?" He leaned in close. "We could siphon money from the company accounts. I'll set up the transfers, and finance will cover it. You just process them through accounting." I froze in place. "Are you serious? That's theft, Jake. We could end up in jail." He laughed dismissively. "Relax, I was just testing you, seeing if you're honest." I wasn't convinced. "That's not funny, Jake. Don't joke about things like that." We walked home in silence, but something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but Jake seemed distant. Maybe it was stress from work. A few days later, our chief accountant left abruptly, and the company brought in Vivian as her replacement. She was young, stunning, and confident. Definitely made an impression. "Listen up, everyone," she announced on her first day. "I expect nothing short of excellence from my team." Her gaze lingered on me a little too long, and I felt uneasy. Over the next few weeks, Vivian made my life a living hell. She constantly criticized my work, forcing me to redo reports over tiny mistakes. One day during a meeting, I spotted a mistake in Vivian's figures. I hesitated but decided to speak up. "Excuse me," I said, "I think there's a mistake in the numbers. The quarterly projections don't match." Mr. Steinman, the director, leaned forward. "Is that true, Vivian?" Vivian's face turned bright red. She quickly scanned the report and forced a smile. "Looks like a minor oversight. Thanks, Amber." Her tone dripped with malice. After the meeting, she cornered me in her office. "Listen up, you old hag," she snarled, dropping the fake politeness. "I'm in charge now, and I'm going to make your life hell until you quit." I stood my ground. "I'm not going anywhere." She laughed darkly. "We'll see about that. You're walking on thin ice, Amber." The following weeks were nothing short of miserable. Vivian loaded me with tasks, criticized everything I did, and made cutting remarks in front of the team. I tried to stay focused, but it was becoming unbearable. Jake wasn't much of a support either. He came home late, barely spoke at dinner, and was always glued to his phone. One night, I stayed late at the office to finish reports. The place was quiet when I heard voices coming from Vivian's office. Curiosity got the better of me, and I listened in. "Everything's going according to plan," Vivian said. "That old bag won't know what hit her." A man's voice replied, but I couldn't make out the words. My heart raced. Just then, the door opened. I darted for the elevator, nearly dropping my purse in my haste. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of a man leaving her office. There was something oddly familiar about him. That night, I couldn't sleep. Who was Vivian talking to? Why did that man look so familiar? The next morning, I was summoned to Mr. Steinman's office. My stomach dropped when I saw Vivian's triumphant grin. "Amber," Mr. Steinman said, "I'm afraid we have to let you go." I was shocked. What? Why? Vivian has expressed concerns about your performance, he said, avoiding my gaze. She doesn't feel you're meeting our expectations. I tried to explain how Vivian had been treating me, but he refused to listen. Vivian comes highly recommended, he said. I trust my friend's judgment. I stood there stunned as he offered me a severance package. I'll make sure you get a decent bonus, he added. I nodded in disbelief and left, but Vivian's voice echoed in my mind. Don't forget to clear out your desk, she said sweetly. At home, Jake wasn't there. I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice cracking as I explained what had happened. Sitting in the empty house, I felt lost. My job had defined so much of who I was. Who was I without it? The following months were a blur. I tried to enjoy my unexpected break, focusing on home projects. One evening, as I finished working on the living room, Jake came home, excitement in his voice. Amber, he said, I got something to share with you. I've got an idea. How about we buy a new house? Jake suddenly suggested. I paused, still holding my paintbrush. What? We just finished fixing up this one. Jake dismissed it. Yeah, but with all the work you've put in, we could sell this place for a good price. Add a little extra, and we could buy something luxurious. There's one nearby, just a few blocks away, and it has a pool. I hesitated. I'm not sure, Jake. We've invested so much in this house. Come on, Amber, he urged. I've already found a buyer for this place. If we sell your apartment, the one we've been renting out, we'll have enough for the down payment. Something felt off, but I pushed it aside. After all, this was Jake, my husband. I had to trust him. Okay, I agreed. Let's do it. The following weeks were a blur of real estate agents, paperwork, and packing. I sold my apartment and deposited the proceeds into our shared account, just as Jake suggested. It felt strange to part with my place, but Jake's enthusiasm was contagious. The day before the move, Jake came home early. Hey, honey, he said. Can you give the house a thorough cleaning? I'm bringing someone over tonight to check it out. I scrubbed the house from top to bottom, making sure it was spotless. By the time evening came, I was exhausted but satisfied. I heard a car pull up, so I fixed my hair, ready to impress the potential buyer. The front door opened, and I greeted them with a smile. But when Jake entered with his guests, I froze. It was Vivian. She walked in, surveying the house with a smirk, then looked at me with a cruel smile. Well, well, she purred. Looks like the maid service already came. I stood in shock as she turned to Jake. You were right, darling. It's perfect. Darling? I looked at Jake, trying to make sense of what was happening, but the cold look in his eyes told me everything. Amber, he said, his voice distant, I want a divorce. My world spun. Divorce? With Vivian? What's going on? I whispered, barely able to speak. Jake's face hardened. It's simple, Amber. I love Vivian. We want to be together. Vivian draped herself over Jake, her eyes gleaming. That's right, honey. I'm not just taking your job. I'm taking your husband too. I couldn't process it. It felt like a nightmare. How long? I asked quietly. Jake shifted uncomfortably. A while, he admitted. But that's not important. What matters is that we part amicably. I let out a bitter laugh. Amicably? You've been cheating on me, and now you want amicable. Jake raised his hands in surrender. I'm trying to be fair. We'll split everything 50-50ths, like the prenup says. I'll keep the house, since it's in my name. Clean break. My mind raced, but a realization hit me. The sale of the apartment, the rush to move, it had all been part of their plan. You manipulated me, I said, my voice growing stronger. You had me sell my apartment to get more money. Jake shrugged nonchalantly. It's just business, Amber. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. My anger flared. You're destroying my life, Jake. Vivian's laughter was mocking. Oh, honey, your life was over long ago. You're just too blind to see it. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Fine, I said, my voice calm. I'll go, but I'm taking what's mine. Jake looked relieved. Whatever. Just be out by morning. I nodded and walked to the phone. Jake and Vivian exchanged confused glances as I dialed. Hello, speedy movers. I need a team here first thing tomorrow. Yes, a full house move. Jake's face darkened. What are you doing? I smiled coldly, feeling a strange sense of power. Taking what's mine, Jake. Every single thing I bought for this house. Hope you and your mistress enjoy your empty love nest. The shock on their faces almost made it all worth it. As I headed upstairs to pack, I heard them whispering angrily. Let them argue, I thought. I have work to do. I spent the night organizing receipts and compiling a list of everything I had purchased. By morning, I had a solid inventory. When the movers arrived, Jake tried to stop them, yelling about the prenuptial agreement. I calmly showed them the receipts and pointed to the clause in our agreement that stated individually purchased items remained the buyer's property. Piece by piece, the house was emptied. Furniture, appliances, even the food in the fridge, all loaded into the van. Jake and Vivian stood in stunned silence, their perfect plan unraveling before their eyes. When the last box was loaded, I turned to them one last time. Jake looked shell-shocked, while Vivian's face twisted with fury. Enjoy your new life, I said, dripping with sarcasm. I'm sure it's everything you dreamed of. The next few days were a blur. I rented a small storage unit for my belongings and checked into a modest hotel. My mind raced, trying to figure out my next move. 2 days later, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It's a lawyer representing Jake, the voice said, unprofessionally. Mrs. Thompson, I'm calling to inform you that your actions regarding the removal of property from your marital home were illegal. My client demands the immediate return of all items. I laughed, surprisingly calm. I don't think so. Everything I took, I purchased. I have the receipts to prove it. The lawyer hesitated. The prenup. I cut him off. Feel free to review it now. I've got my own legal matters to attend to. I hung up, my heart pounding, but a sense of victory bloomed inside me. This wasn't over, but I wasn't backing down. Later that evening, I called my son Tommy. I hadn't told him about the divorce yet, and my heart ached at the thought of breaking the news. Mom, he asked, his voice full of concern. Is everything okay? I've been trying to reach Dad, but he's not answering. I took a deep breath. Tommy, your father and I are getting a divorce. There was a long silence on the other end. Why? What happened? I explained the situation as best I could, leaving out the bitterness for Tommy's sake. He was quiet for a long time. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Do you need a place to stay? I smiled, grateful for his support. No, honey, I'm okay for now, but there is something you could do for me. I outlined my plan, feeling a pang of guilt for involving him. But I needed someone I could trust completely. Tommy agreed without hesitation. I'll do whatever you need, Mom. Dad's made his choice. I'm on your side. I hung up, a mixture of emotions swirling inside me, sadness for the family we once had, anger at Jake's betrayal, but also a fierce resolve. I wasn't out of this fight yet, not by a long shot. I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Jake and Vivian thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. I was resolute in my decision to regain everything they had stolen from me. My career, my self-respect, and my future. The following weeks unfolded like a blur of determination. True to his word, Tommy returned to Jake's home, claiming he wanted to support his father through the rough times. Jake, taken aback by his son's sudden display of loyalty, accepted him back without hesitation. What Jake didn't know was that Tommy had become my inside ally. Every evening we would speak, and he would keep me updated on his discoveries. Mom, you won't believe this, Tommy said one night, his voice barely above a whisper. I got into Dad's computer. There are emails between him and Vivian, going back months. They've been scheming for a long time. I felt a knot in my stomach but kept my cool. What else did you uncover? His voice dropped lower. There are financial papers. I'm not sure what they mean, but something seems off. A glimmer of hope ignited within me. This could be the breakthrough I needed. Can you make copies of everything? I already have, he responded. I'll bring them to you tomorrow. The next day, Tommy handed me a USB drive filled with documents. As I scanned through them, my skills as an accountant kicked in. The more I read, the more the pieces fell into place. Discrepancies in financial statements, money flowing between phantom accounts, and the key players at the heart of it all. Jake and Vivian. I remembered Jake joking about embezzling from the company. It wasn't a joke after all. Armed with this new evidence, I knew the time had come to act. I called my lawyer and explained everything I had uncovered. This is serious, Amber, he said gravely. If this is true, we're dealing with major fraud. But we need more solid proof. I understand, I replied. What's the next step? We need to involve the company, he suggested. If we can show that Jake and Vivian are embezzling from Steinman Financials, it could significantly impact the divorce proceedings. The following day, I walked into Steinman Financials, my head held high. The faces of my former colleagues stared at me as I passed by, some sympathetic, others curious. But I didn't let it faze me. I knocked on Mr. Steinman's office door. His face registered surprise as I entered. Amber, what are you doing here? He asked. Taking a deep breath, I replied, Mr. Steinman, I need to talk to you. It's about Jake, Vivian, and your company. For the next hour, I laid out everything, the suspicious transfers, the hidden accounts, and the discrepancies in the reports. As I spoke, Mr. Steinman's expression became more serious. When I finished, he sat in silence for a while before reaching for his phone. Get me the head of security and the legal team immediately, he ordered. Then, looking at me, he added, Amber, I owe you an apology and a thank you. If what you're saying is true, you may have saved this company from disaster. The following days were a whirlwind. Mr. Steinman initiated an urgent audit of the company's finances. The results were staggering. The auditors confirmed what I had suspected. $400,000 had been illegally taken from the company. The realization of how long this had been happening right under my nose made me feel sick. A full investigation was launched involving forensic accountants and law enforcement. As the evidence mounted, it became clear that Jake and Vivian were deeply involved in the fraud. I watched as their world came crashing down. One morning, police officers arrived at the office and took Jake and Vivian away in handcuffs. Their assets were seized, and a criminal case for financial crimes was opened. Although seeing justice served brought some satisfaction, the aftermath was still painful. Due to our prenuptial agreement, I couldn't recover the money from the apartment I sold. Those funds, along with our joint accounts, were divided. The house, which was in Jake's name, remained his property. But my lawyer fought hard, securing half of the house's value for me, as well as lifetime alimony. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. But I wasn't done yet. I pursued Vivian, seeking compensation for the financial and emotional harm she had caused. The court ruled in my favor, ordering her to pay over $35,000 in damages. Jake and Vivian received suspended sentences for their fraud. All their property was seized, plunging them into deep debt. The court also barred them from holding any senior positions in the future. Their careers and their reputations were destroyed. As I left the courthouse after the final hearing, I was overwhelmed with mixed emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and hope. The past months had been a nightmare, but I had emerged stronger. I had uncovered a major fraud, cleared my name, and secured my financial future. With a generous settlement, I was ready to start fresh. After weeks of searching, I found the perfect place: a small house with a charming garden on the outskirts of town. It was modest compared to the extravagant home I had shared with Jake, but as I stood on the porch, gazing at the neat rows of flowers, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I threw myself into remodeling the house, making it mine. I painted the walls in warm, inviting colors, added bookshelves, and set up a cozy home office with a view of the garden. Tommy visited often, helping with the heavier tasks and just spending time with me. One evening, we sat on the porch swing, sipping lemonade. You know, Mom, Tommy said, smiling, I'm really proud of you. After everything, look at you now. You're amazing. Tears welled up in my eyes. Thank you, honey. That means more to me than you know. One day, I received an unexpected call from Mr. Steinman. Amber, he said warmly, I hope you're doing well. I have an offer for you. It turned out that after the fraud scandal, Steinman Financials was looking for a new chief accountant. They wanted me. Your work in uncovering the fraud was outstanding, Mr. Steinman said. We need someone like you, and there's a substantial bonus as a thank you for saving the company. I was speechless for a moment before I managed to respond. Mr. Steinman, I thank you. I would be honored. The first day back at Steinman Financials felt surreal. Walking through the doors as the new chief accountant, I held my head high. My former colleagues greeted me with smiles. Mr. Steinman met me in the lobby, beaming, and to my surprise, he pulled me into a hug. "Welcome back, Amber," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're lucky to have you." As I settled into my new role, I felt a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. I was doing meaningful work, surrounded by people who respected me. The financial bonus was generous, allowing me to pay off my new home and build up my savings. In the evenings, I would unwind in my garden, sometimes with Tommy, sometimes alone. I also started taking courses at the local community college, art, literature, and even a cooking class. For the first time in years, I focused on my own happiness and growth. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Stay amazed.